All right, we just stepped outside and we heard from Ryan. Ryan, you were just on stage. I really resonate with everything you were saying. And can you introduce yourself and kind of introduce the topic you were speaking about out there?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. My name is Ryan Temple. I'm the president at Sustainable Northwest Wood, a distribution yard in Portland. And the Western Hardwood Association asked me to come speak at their annual meeting about our involvement in the Portland Airport project. I think what was particularly interesting to the Hardwood Association, maybe what they wanted to hear about, was the extent to which the project had a very keen focus on using not just locally sourced wood and not just sustainably sourced wood, but wood that could be specifically traced back to the forest of origin, so that at the end of the day, the port will be able to talk about the people, the forest, the mills, the communities, all the hands that touched it, who made it possible, and who benefited from the work.
Listen, I just flew in yesterday. I was coming in from Texas, went to LA, and then landed in Portland. Well, here's a funny story. I landed quite late, and I walked out at like Delta Terminal D.
Yeah.
And I walk out, and I'm like, wait a second. Like, this is the same roof that it was before. But until I walked into the main atrium, I was mind blown, man. It was beautiful. I was tired, a little delirious, but it was beautiful. It was amazing. So I want to go back there and explore it and see the natural sunlight coming through the roof. You mentioned something about tracing the pieces back to the forest. What does that mean?
Yeah. So that roof that you're talking about, the footprint of it is 9 acres.
Jeez, man.
Up above in it, the lattice work that's hanging under the glulam beams. The glulam beams are done by and large by Zippo. The lattice work, 3x6, 660,000 board feet of it, end to end. There would be 83 miles of 3x6 in there.
Say it again. If I put end to end all
End
the
to
lettuce
end,
pieces,
all of your 3x6, you would stretch 83 miles.
83 miles. Jeez, man.
Which was, phenomenal in and of itself. But what really makes it cool is that all of those pieces can be traced back to specific forests. So I think there were 10 different forests that the 3x6 lattice work came from. Flowed through 2 different mills, but those 10 forests represented a diversity of landowner types. Some of it was public community forest, some of it was tribal forest, some was nature conservancy, some was small family forest. And so the port wanted to make sure that in doing this work, they were not just supporting a diversity of landowner types, but when it was all said and done, that they would be able to honor and celebrate the different people who were involved in growing, managing, and harvesting this wood.
Brother.
And I think they achieved it. They knocked it out of the park.
Absolutely. And what you said was really cool on stage. You said this is the Portland Airport project is a celebration of wood. And at the end, you said it's also the people that made it happen. And you mentioned Zippo, like Casey's my friend, and John, and all those people.
Yeah.
And then also Mike from Trillium Pacific. So the people you speak of are the people that are part of our company's mission statement, or my personal mission statement is this. It's simple. It's to improve the lives of the people in the wood industry globally. Yeah. And that's what you're doing very directly.
And if you're improving the lives of the people in that industry, in all likelihood, you're improving the industry, and you're also improving the forest, because the industry is increasingly evolving to a point of balance between sustainability and restoration and what the industry needs. And so what I found is that some of the best forest stewards out there are the people whose livelihoods depend on the forest.
Which is everybody in the wood world.
If you're a business who's got a long-term commitment to a specific place, like a lot of the mills that we're working with are,
yes,
then you realize this is what I've got to work with, and it's going to be in my interest to deal with this well and sustainably and make sure it's here for me, for my children, for my children's children, as long as it needs to be there.
100%. Listen, the message, I go around the world. I just came back from Africa, from Europe, from Canada, and my message is simple. Wood is good. And do you agree? Wood is good for us, as people, as humans?
Yeah, like anything, it's hard to ever draw a bright line. This is good, this is bad, right? And so when you compare wood to other building materials, clearly from an environmental perspective, from a personal health perspective in terms of the chemicals used in the processing of it, wood has advantages over other building materials. That said, there's still a spectrum of different forest management that happens. Everything from that which meets the legal standard, well, we'll go further. There's that which does not meet the legal standard, right? There's still illegal logging going on. There's that which meets the legal standard. And then there's that which realizes that our understanding of silviculture is a constantly evolving science. And we'd like to aspire to the next level of that, exceed the legal standard, and try and predict where sustainable forestry is going. We support anybody who's trying to do the right thing. We also recognize that some people are going above and beyond, and really pride ourselves in trying to be on the cutting edge of silviculture.
That's incredible, man. There were some key learnings you mentioned from stages. Anything specifically stands out? Some of the things you mentioned were it was a challenge to find materials. My question was like, why? Why was it a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, what made it particularly challenging and, frankly, fun and the airport project is because they did want to trace it back to a forest. And so you're really looking at trying to line up a specific timber sale with a mill with an end product. And so there's just a lot more timing involved when you're tracing it all the way back to the forest than it would be if you're just calling a mill and saying, you know, what have you got on the ground right now? It doesn't really matter where it came from.
Sure.
We just want to use your wood. Tracing it back to the forest meant that we had to sometimes backcast, you know, up to a year in some cases when we knew a timber sale would be coming online to make sure they were bidding on that timber sale and tracking through the system. So a little bit more coordination than you would typically have.
That's so cool that you guys did that. And then number two, you said it was a very compelling story. What do you mean?
Well, the story is, I think the compelling nature of it is threefold, really. Part of it is being able to trace it back to a particular forest, which is interesting. And the fact that the people who are involved in the project were making the visits to that forest to come to understand the people and the places and what it's about.
Right.
Part of the story is about the sustainability. And so folks learning what restoration means in forests, what sustainable management means, what wildfire risk reduction, whatever the objective is in that forest, understanding the nuances of that sustainability story. But I think the most rewarding piece of the story to me is the human story, which is about relationships, right? The forest products industry is by and large built on relationships, but those relationships have tended to be one step in the chain. In other words, you know, a forest might know a logger might know a mill might know a secondary processor. But what happened here, which was different, is the relationship spanned that entire supply chain.
That's so cool.
And the story that started being told where literally you had the cabinet shop or the fabricator meeting the logger and the forest owner and vice versa. And the relationships developed out of that make a really cool story, but also they lay the foundation for future work. Because as cool as the airport project is, if it's a one-off deal, it's just a story at that point. But the net result are relationships that allow perpetuity and replication, then now it's not just a story about an event, it becomes a story about impact and a story about change. And I think that's the long-term story that's interested in telling.
Listen, that's incredible. I think, can I ask you that, you asked for Q&A or questions, and I was like, Ryan, what was your favorite part of the project? And you had a really cool little story. Can you share that briefly?
Yeah, sort of building on what I just mentioned. But
yes.
When we had the architects in the forest meeting the loggers, you've got these two individuals, two sectors, frankly, who are, you know, oftentimes at very different ends of a variety of types of spectrums.
Yes.
Not normal bedfellows, if
yes,
you will.
Sure.
But nevertheless, to see a mutual respect, understanding, and appreciation of what each does. For that architect to understand the hard work and everything that's involved in managing a forest, and for a forest owner to understand the complexities and the ingenuity that's required to turn that into, not just to turn that log into lumber, but to craft that lumber into this incredibly sculpted, highly engineered wood ceiling. It makes the wood product more valuable to the architect to understand where it comes from, and it makes the end product more compelling and a source of pride, I think, for the landowner, the logger, when they come to understand that my work here in the woods has a net result of this amazing ceiling at the end of the day. you just see a sense of pride that grows in both of those two entities through that relationship building.
And you got to witness it firsthand.
I was there for it. Yeah,
That's
I mean,
the
you know,
coolest.
it's a small role, but we're a facilitator, right? I mean, we're a distribution yard. My job in a way is kind of easy. I don't have to make things. I don't have to grow things. I don't have to harvest things. But what I do have to do is I have to know all of the entities who do that hard work.
Yes.
And I have to find a way to build connections between them so that somebody who's interested in supporting great stewardship has an easy pathway for themselves to make that happen, to allow that support to occur.
Man, that's so good. Thank you for
There you have
sharing
it.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I love your tagline, local wood for the greater good.
That's it.
And that really aligns with that little statement I make is wood is good.
It is.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
All right.
Glad to
Thank
have met you.
You too.